Okay, so that video, right, I broke it into its parts of the different commits. And I wanted you to go ahead and code all the way to the end in the real world example. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the real world example in my second part here because I want to actually talk about this in kind of a lead in to next week, right? Because I realize he didn't, I mean, he kind of covered it, but I actually want to show you something fun to do with this to convert it to Fresno. And in that process, talk about APIs and how to read documentation. But before we get there, okay, before we get there, what I want you to do now is now that you've learned a bit about promises, and we have some code already, right? Let me stop this. The code that we're talking about is in our 30 asynchronous workout. We're just going to do the work in here. This is the state of the app, at least the way I left it. Okay. So what I want you to do here is I want you to implement promises into this code. Okay. And yeah, we learned a lot in this last video about promises and about handling asynchronous code with a promise with the resolve and the reject, right? It's either going to come back resolved or it's going to come back rejected. Now we're going to learn more about the idea of how to do this with APIs later. But because sometimes what happens is the promises are just built into some of the commands that we use, so we don't actually have to declare them. That's something we'll see with fetch in a bit. But in this case, the other thing you saw, besides, of course, the promises and how to use them and how to chain together these dot thens, the idea is to say, can we take the example we had with the workout app and implement promises? So I'm going to have you do that, but just a word about the switch statement, because one of the things we haven't covered, and this is I'm glad this got covered, so at least you got introduced to it. So the switch statement, if you didn't get this in writing it, is basically just an if then else with a nicer, more condensed structure. Some might say more efficient, some might say more readable. It's definitely, when you think about if I have a lot of conditions I want to check for, the switch statement is definitely a nice way to do it. So, in case, basically, I think of this in case it's sunny, right? Then it resolve, but it doesn't have to be resolved. These could be any kind of logic outcomes, the expressions that you would want to have. Run doesn't have to be these promises. So I don't want you to walk away thinking this switch statement is unique to promises. It's not, because for those of you new to JavaScript, this is something you probably have not seen. So I just want you to know you can use these switch statements anywhere you would have a fairly complex set or even several things that you're checking for. So FYI. And then the break just says don't check any of the other ones. And if none of these get met, if none of these show in case it's sunny, no, in case it's cloudy, no, in case it's rainy, then just the default run in this case. Okay. All right. So it follows the same logic of an if then else. It just is different syntax. And again, many people think cleaner. Okay. So coming back here. So here's what I want you to do now. So let's do a coding challenge. Like I said, take that 030 asynchronous workout, right? And implement promises into it. Now, let me give you a hint. Let's pull that code up, right? So this is in 030, right? So here we have it. So where would we be implementing our promise? Somewhere in here, because this is the place our asynchronous code is at. Okay, so that's your first hint, right? And then where do we call that, right? Remember when we make an asynchronous call, setting up a promise to return a resolve or reject, then what do we do? Okay, dropping hints here. Okay, so give that your best try. Now, here's what I want to say, and I'm repeating myself a little from what I said with the challenge from last time. Do your best to get working code. If you're not successful, I would like to see your code, even if it wasn't successful, but if for sure, if it's not, but you want all the points, then tell me in your README file what you did to try to resolve the error that you were getting, right? And if you weren't able to write the code, then tell me in your README file what you tried. That's what I want to see, because the idea of this work is to take what you've learned and see if you can implement something. And if you're not, then cool, tell me what you tried. Then you'll see me do it, of course, because that's what the pattern we've used. That is the design pattern that we followed in this class. Okay, so either way, whether you write in your README file or whether you give me some code and tell me it didn't work, and you know it didn't work, because trust me, the first thing I'm going to do when I grade work is bring up your work. Okay, either way, put workout refactor with promises in the next video. Okay, I'll put this video right after here. And then I'll probably end up doing one video for both this part and the refactor. Okay, but commit your work with refactor, workout refactor with promises. All right, I'll see you on the next one.